Hey everyone, it's Emily. So I decided to create you guys a tutorial as well, or a couple, I should say. And this one is from Making Thinking Visible, which is a really great text. If you have not used it before or looked into it, I'd be happy to let you borrow it or look through it and make copies out of it for the things that you may be interested in reading more about. So the strategy we're talking about with this one is called Think, Puzzle, Explore. So it's very similar to KWL, which we'll talk a little bit more in depth about in just a second. But first, I want to touch on what is Think, Puzzle, Explore. So I can switch my screen. So Think, Puzzle, Explore looks at what do you think you know about this topic. The difference between this and a KWL chart is when we look at KWL, the first part of that is what I know. The difference is that this is what do you think that you actually know, not just what do you know. The reason why we frame it this way is that way it's label students' ideas as tentative or partial knowledge that we're going to continue exploring and continue to develop. What puzzles you about this topic rather than what do you know, like in the middle of that. Instead of saying what I want to know, we're going to be saying what puzzles you about this topic or what questions do you have. Pushes students to think more broadly in terms of inquiry in this case. And then finally, it's how might you explore the puzzles we have around this topic. And the reason we say explore is part of the routine that directs students' attention to how those puzzles might be investigated and trying to get them to really do more of that self-directed learning and taking ownership over their own learning. So with that, there's a lot of different places you can use this. You can use it at the beginning of a unit, revisit it throughout the unit. So if you are working with a student at the start of the unit, you may want to check in with them and go over this Think, Puzzle, Explore. Here's a graphic organizer, and I'll attach this to our Adobe Spark page as well. But that you could use with students if you wanted to do it more formally, or it could be something really informal where you're just asking them questions and you're mentally making notes about it. Or you could jot down the notes for the students and then come back to that again at the end of the unit. So at the beginning of the unit, if you're going to do it, it's asking them, what do you think you already know about this class? So if I am in history, maybe I'm asking, what do you think you already know about the Civil War? Or if it is in history, or not in history, if it's in humanities, and you guys are reading the Iliad, those students have already read the children's Homer, so asking them, what do you remember about the children's Homer? What do you think you remember about the story of Odysseus? And what do you think you remember about the Trojan War? And so giving them those opportunities and then asking them, what questions were you really confused about when you read that last time? Or going through the puzzle part repeatedly as you come back to it throughout the time that they're reading that text, saying, what puzzled you about what we just read? And jotting that down. And then how might we answer those questions together? Or where might we find those answers? Who could we go to? Who could we advocate to that we need more help? And then showing the students how their understanding has grown would be really valuable to showing them this at the end. And that's why we come back to it over and over and over again. Other place that you could use this is if you're helping students study for an upcoming assessment in any of their classes, reviewing with them, what do you think you already know? And in that column, when you guys are reviewing together, put down the things that they think they already know, and then the things that they don't know, putting in that puzzle section in the middle here. And then when they go home for homework, they have an action plan of what they need to do in order to find those answers in order to be successful on their upcoming assessment. It's not just saying, oh, well, you knew that when the Civil War occurred, but you didn't know the major generals or whatever that were part of that. And so that's what you need to study. It's actually giving them documentation of what they need to propel themselves forward. Additionally, this strategy can be used from something with really big ideas, like if they're writing a paper and you want to they're doing research and what they think they already know about the topic, what questions they have about the topic, and what do they need to go research and where might they find that research. Or it could be that they need to go back to their reader response book that they did in English class and look at what they have already read. You could use it for a very specific topic in math and choose just one skill or area to specify so that students are doing more of like an error analysis and they're able to see this is what I think I know about simplifying fractions. What I'm really still confused about simplifying fractions is how I get from 1/2 to 4/8, or I'm really confused about how do I get from a mixed number to an improper fraction or an improper fraction to a mixed number, and then exploring where are different resources that they could look for that. Well, they could go to 0 Hour, they could look in their math book, they could talk to their teacher, they could talk to you, they could talk to the special education teacher. There's all these options that they just may not realize yet because they haven't sat down and really thought about it, and they need your help to come up with a plan of how they're going to be successful. So far we've talked a little bit about the different areas or how this is used overall and where you could potentially use this. I want to dive a little bit deeper into each of the components. So let's first talk about that think area. What do you think that you know? After you ask this question to the student, you really have to slow down and give them an opportunity to think. Give them wait time. Set a timer and say you have 2 minutes to jot down some things that are important for you to think about, or things that you think you know. And then when we get to the what questions or puzzles do you have, and you're asking them that question, you're inviting the students to wonder more about that topic, to ask additional questions, to dive deeper into that content. Other questions that you could add to that for them if you're stuck and you're kind of in a place where they're like, well, I don't know, I don't have any questions, I'm not puzzled by anything, because inevitably that will happen. Additional things that you could ask them are, what would be interesting to investigate and learn more about? What are you wondering about? Are there things about this topic about which you are curious? Or what do you not know yet? Are you having trouble remembering? And if you're doing it as a study guide. Or maybe it's that they are doing an essay on Huckleberry Finn and they want to know more information about who Huck was and this character analysis. And so doing some more research on that and asking questions about who Huckleberry Finn was as a person. Finally, that last column is that explore. So when you're asking a student, how might you explore the puzzles that you're not sure about yet or questions that you have? You may want to highlight a couple of things for them that you notice from what their puzzles are. In terms of maybe you see a pattern that they really have trouble remembering the names of the generals from the Civil War. And so they've written down a whole list of generals, and that's what you need to go over. Or maybe once you do that, you realize, man, they're not going to be able to remember all of these. We probably need to differentiate in that area for them. So questions that you could ask them when you get to the explore section. If we get stuck at how might you explore the puzzles? Whom might you ask? Where could you get further information? How would you frame your search keywords when you're doing research? Like if you're going to Google, what keywords are you going to put into that search bar? What sources would be worth tapping into? What could you do yourself to investigate the puzzle other than look up information? And how could you find ways to answer your own puzzles? And that's really pushing them, again, to take ownership and to gain some more independence in their learning. So this is just a really quick and easy tool, something easy to keep in your binder, have in your back pocket. Again, as I said before, this can be formal where you're actually writing this down with them, or if you're scribing for them. It could be, sorry, my lights just turned off. Oh, you can't see that. That's okay. Sorry for the confusion. So one of the other things that is really important to keep in mind while you're going through this process is the language that you're using. Making sure that, and that's the biggest difference between the KWL charts and this Think Puzzle Explore. It really is centered around getting students to identify themselves, what they think they know about something, and identifying gaps in their thinking so they're able to fill their own gaps. And some of that is so that they're able to advocate for themselves going forward as well. So I really hope this video was helpful for you guys. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope this is something that you'll get to take away. I do recommend keeping a couple of these sheets in your binder with you, making a couple copies so that you have access to it. I will attach these, the Think Puzzle Explore sheet, let's go back to them really quick. Both of this sheet as well as the Think Puzzle Explore overview of what that looks like. This might be good to keep inside of like a sheet protector inside of your binder, along with a couple of copies of this sheet, so that way you can refer back to it as needed and you already have it ready to go. Remember, don't feel like you have to do this formally. You can do it informally and keep a mental note about it. But there's lots of different ways to utilize this, as well as make it digital if you want to make it digital too. Put it in a Google Doc. All right. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I really enjoyed creating this for you, and I hope it's helpful and it's something that you can utilize in the future. Have an awesome day.